Hey mathematicians! Okay, before you start watching this video where I'm going to show you how to use graphing technology to graph this equation, make sure you have the link to the calculator open here. So it should look just like this if you've got the right thing open. Do not watch this video without having a graphing calculator open in front of you, because it's really not going to make as much sense or be as helpful. So as you can see here, I have my equation from part A, where we did problem number 1. So I'm going to just take my equation that I got in part A, and I'm getting ready to type it here in the equation editor of the graphing calculator. So in this space right up here. So 4x plus 8y equals 15. And as you might have suspected, we did get a line. We know that this is the graph of a line, which remember means the word linear, because we've got that x and that y. This is in standard form, and it gives us the graph of the line that represents the situation right here. Now, what exactly are we going to do with this line? Well, if you flip over your workbook, you'll see that part C of question 1 asks you to fill in a table. So this looks like it's going to be a lot of work, but I'm going to show you how to use the calculator to actually get yourself a table so that you don't even need to do the work to fill in these answer boxes. So now one small issue is that the graphing calculator won't give you a table if your equation is in standard form, which is what we have right now. So we're going to need to convert this equation to isolate the y, because isolating the y is the only way that the Desmos will give you a table. So that's okay, because you know how to do that, because you've done this a few times. That's why you're doing this activity right now, is because you passed the mastery. So we know that we'll do minus 4x on both sides. We now know that these 4 x's are going to cancel each other out because they were inverses. And I need to bring down my 8y. And we know that we can't combine a 15 and a minus 4x. So we're going to leave them as 2 separate parts. And then finally, you know that we've got to cancel out this 8 by dividing both sides by 8. So for your mastery, you had a little bit more work to do to get this into slope-intercept form. But for our purposes here, since the y is isolated, we've done enough work for Desmos to now give us a table, because we've got our y isolated. So I'm going to scooch this over here. So my new format of my equation, I'm going to type right under here in another spot. So y equals. To make sure that the calculator knows that I'm dividing 15 and 4x both by 8, I'm going to put them in parentheses. Divide by 8. So you can zoom in here and see how I typed it into the graphing calculator. And I know that more than likely I did my conversion right, because you can see to get rid of this purple line, I'm just going to click on that button to get rid of it for a second. So the blue line represents the equation before I switched it around. And the purple graph represents the line after I switched it around. So you can see it's the same line, because they're both they're both graphed on top of each other. So you know that you probably did your conversion right. So now here comes the really cool part. I'm going to click in the box where the rearranged equation is. I am going to click this little settings button. And when I do, look, it gives me an option. It will make a table for me. So how awesome is that? Now we can go back to the workbook and we can use the table that we just created to get the answers that we need for the workbook. So, for example, I can see that I need to figure out what the value of the walnuts would be if my raisins are 0. Well, if I go right over here to the table, you can see right here where I've got 0 raisins, I'm going to type the number 1.875. So I'm going to put it right there in the table. So my version doesn't change to green like yours does. So what do I do for this one though? Because I've got a value of 0.25, but I don't see anything on my table in this column that gives me a 0.25. Well, again, the reason Desmos is so stinking cool, I can literally just type right down here at the bottom of I can click on my table and I can actually type 0.25 in my X column, and then look, it gives me the Y value that goes with it. So I'm going to take that and type it right here in my table. So you can see I've put it right there. And it also works in reverse. So this time it gave me the value for walnuts, but I need a value for raisins. So I can still go over to my table. I can click on the table. Actually, I don't even need to add anything to the table, do I? Duh. I don't know what I was just thinking. Because I can see right here, 1.375 matches up with the 1. So I would put that value in my table. Another option I can use is the graph. So I could look at my graph and see where my walnuts equal 1.375. So I could just kind of drag along the line here until I get to 1.375 on the graph, and I see that the x coordinate that goes along with it is a 1. So lots of different ways that, well, not lots of different ways, a couple different ways, either by using the table or looking at the graph to figure out what those missing values are on the table. And it's going to be a lot easier for you now that you know how to type it into Desmos.